First shift at graveyard. Hi, my name is Josh, and I have just started my first job at the old graveyard in the outskirts of the town. The graveyard is located on a dark and winding road, far away from any major cities or towns. The journey to reach the graveyard of the old town felt like I was traveling to the end of the world, as it was miles away from the nearest settlement. As I walked towards the graveyard, surrounded by dense woods, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The silence of the countryside was unnerving, and the looming gray clouds in the sky didn't help my discomfort. Nonetheless, I needed the job and pushed aside my sense of foreboding. The ancient tombstones and mausoleums of the graveyard were all that was visible in the darkness that surrounded me. The place was entirely silent, save for a few crows that were perched on the old trees, their caws echoing through the night. As I walked around trying to get familiar with the place, I couldn't help but be struck by how desolate the surroundings were. The only company I had were the silver moon, the chattering crows, and the ghosts of the graveyard. As I moved around on my first night duty, I found that the shadows of the trees and tombstones grew longer and longer, and the darkness was almost palpable. There were strange movements of shadows that I couldn't quite explain, almost like they were taking on a life of their own. The lengthening shadows kept making me feel like someone was following me, but every time I looked back, there was nobody there. As the night progressed, the shadows seemed to be moving around me, but every time I caught sight of them, I looked away quickly. I kept to myself and focused on finishing my duties as diligently as possible. As the graveyard grew darker, I started noticing that the shadows were not just shadows anymore. They were becoming ghostly apparitions, walking around me, their eyes fixed on me as they went about their business. Their translucent and spectral forms were constantly shifting and changing, making it quite difficult to keep tabs on them. I could hear their whispers and murmurings, but the words they uttered were very vague. Despite being scared out of my wits, I tried to pay attention to the apparitions that were wandering past me. I was surprised to observe that they were all from different eras in history. Some of them looked like they were from the 1800s, while others were from more recent times. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, and their whispers left my nerves on edge, but I made sure I didn't look into their eyes, as that was one of the rules. After some time had passed, I completed most of my tasks at the graveyard. I was about to leave when I heard rustling in the nearby bushes. I turned around to find a group of creatures emerging from the darkness. Their glowing red eyes and their sharp claws filled me with a cold sense of dread. I frantically tried to make my way back to the safety of the gate, but the creatures seemed unrelenting. They chased me, growling in the dark, their breath coming in harsh pants, and I could hear their claws dragging through the dirt. As I ran, I could feel twigs and branches snapping under my feet. The creatures seemed so close that their breath was hot on my heels. I zigzagged my way through the tombs in the graveyard, clutching my flashlight, my heart thumping in my chest. Finally, I managed to escape through the gates of the graveyard and stood outside, panting hard. My legs were weak, and I was still shaking with fear. I looked back, and to my relief, the creatures were gone. But then, I saw the apparition of an old man, who whispered to me, "The ultimate rule is to never return, or your fate will be sealed." As I heard those words, I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, and I knew then and there that I would never return to the graveyard. I turned away from the graveyard, never to return again, and walked my way back to the safety of my home. The ghosts and apparitions of the old, desolate cemetery with the wandering shadows and ferocious creatures remained behind, and I promised myself, come what may, to never forget the lore of the ancient graveyard at the end of the town.